Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Five Star Zone. I'm your host, Rico Beard, and let's break down the results that happened in week number 12. It's hard to believe the season is almost done, but yeah, we only have two more scheduled games in the regular season for every team out there. And let's just jump right into it. Look, the main guys stayed the main guys. And as of right now, three teams pretty much a lock to make the college football playoffs. Wisconsin played Indiana at Indiana, and Indiana did what they're supposed to do. Fernando Mendoza had 4 touchdowns. Indiana wins 31-7. I don't think there's any doubt that Indiana's going to be one of the teams in the Big Ten championship game. Rest of their road is pretty easy when you look at their final games coming up. They're looking at games at Wisconsin. They have Wisconsin at home, and then they go to Purdue. Let's face it, those are two of the bottom teams of the Big Ten. I would be totally shocked if Indiana loses one of those two games, which, in my opinion, locks them into one of the spots for the Big Ten championship game. In Indianapolis, it's going to be a home game for them. It's going to be right down the road. It'll be interesting to see what the crowd looks like because, yeah, I guess if you're a Hoosier fan, I would have been started buying tickets for this thing a long time ago because knowing your team was going to be there like 40 minutes up the road, it's going to be a fun environment, a festive environment, and, it's kind of fun seeing that little dog make it to the game and seeing what they can do. This is a different Indiana team from last year, too. Last year, I think it was all brand new. They were winning, but it was like new money. They didn't know how to win. They didn't know what to do, and they got to the playoffs, and you saw things just weren't the same. When they played good teams last year, they looked like the old Indiana team. It was either feast or famine. Either they were killing you or they were getting destroyed. This year's team learned how to handle adversity. This year's team is really impressive because Kirk Cignetti has really found that next level with this Hoosier team, and you're seeing it on the field. Look, I think the mythical line right now is Ohio State's favored by 5.5 in that game. I wouldn't put it past Indiana to win that game and just flat out win the Big Ten outright and maybe even steal the number 1 overall seed from the Buckeyes, who currently hold it according to the College Football Weekly rankings. Speaking of the Buckeyes did their thing as well. They hosted UCLA, and not really a game whatsoever, 48-10. It's the collision course that I just finished talking about. Ohio State, Indiana, in Indianapolis. Now, some things could change. Ohio State has a big game coming up. Not necessarily next week. Next week, you got Rutgers at home. So you don't want to get too caught looking ahead for the Michigan game on the road, which, believe it or not, I was shocked. I had to look this up. Michigan, Ohio State, final week of the season, noon kickoff at the Big House. Ohio State is only favored by 3.5 points. What? The Buckeye team that's been blowing out teams is only favored by 3.5 points. I wonder how much of that is dealing with the fact that Ryan Day has yet to beat Michigan for the last 4 years. I thought I was being trolled. I thought, no, this can't be true. I looked it up. Now, you can find it anywhere between, 6.5 to 3.5, but there's a lot of major books that have this game as Ohio State minus 3.5 over Michigan. Now, look, you got to beat Rutgers first. Then you play Michigan. And we'll preview that game as we get closer. I don't see how it's Ohio State's only favored by so little, especially with the defense that they play and the offense that Michigan has that has been struggling. But as of right now, believe it or not, so I don't know if you're a bettor, what you want to do with that. But hey, Ohio State is favored by only 3.5 points. Make of that what you want. The other team that looks like they're on the collision course with the college football playoff is the Oregon Ducks. Oregon hosted Minnesota. Oregon wins 42-13 in a game that, once again, not really close. The top of the Big Ten really not playing. When they play most of the other Big Ten, you're not really seeing anything that's earth-shattering. Now, here's the thing for Oregon. Oregon is playing a game this upcoming week against USC. They're hosting USC. Now, normally you'd be like, man, it's going to be tough to go into Alcindor and win, but except for USC's done that because they're former Pac-12 playmates. USC needs this game. And I'm going to get to that in a second, but Oregon hosting USC, and then Oregon goes to Washington to end the year. Of the three teams in the Big Ten that could possibly get upset, Oregon is the one that's a little bit teetering. Oregon is the one that really, they're sitting there and they're 9-1. And if they lost the game, they would still make the playoffs. But they're not playing the strongest football of the three. Now let's get to that other two games. There's two more teams that still have a legitimate shot. We've been talking about it for a few weeks. It's Michigan and it's USC. Michigan goes on the road. They play Northwestern at Wrigley Field. Look, Michigan is going to have to clean up their act. How they're only favored, they're 3.5-point underdogs to Ohio State in a few weeks. I don't know. They have Maryland on the road this following week. It'll be battle of the freshman quarterbacks between Bryce Underwood and Malik Washington. I don't know exactly what's going on with this Michigan offense, but it's been sputtering for the last couple of games. They really haven't been clicking the way I think that they wanted to click. The Michigan State game and the Purdue game, they won, but it wasn't quite what they wanted, especially Purdue. Purdue had a chance to win the game. They didn't. Northwestern had a chance at Wrigley Field to win the game, and Michigan needed a walk-off field goal by Savada, a 31-yard field goal. He walks it off as time expires. They win the game 24-22. Savada had already missed some kicks in that game. And Michigan uncharacteristically had 5 turnovers in that game. 5. Yeah, it was a head-scratcher. They're winning. They're making good plays on defense. They're making timely plays on defense. And really, their offense is boiled down to big play runs. And Jordan Marshall didn't disappoint, had 142 yards and 2 touchdowns, 1 long run. That's their offense. And that's what's going to be concerning. And that's what leads me to kind of scratch my head when they play the Buckeyes, because the Buckeyes play really good defense. Matt Patricia, I don't know what Matt Patricia wants to be when he grows up. Matt Patricia, I don't know if he wants to stay in college football or try to get back to the pros, but the Buckeye defense they're very stingy when it comes to touchdowns. So, look, Sharon Moore has 14 days or less than 14 days to get this thing cleared up. You can't overlook Washington. You can't overlook Maryland on the road. But right now, this is a team that they don't look like they're ready to kind of take that mantle and try to get that becoming the Big Ten's 4th team in the college football playoff. Now, here's the thing that they do have going for them. Last year, had no shot at beating Ohio State at Ohio State. Ohio State was like 20-point favorites, if I remember correctly. Michigan goes in there, wins game. They've won 4 in a row. They know how to beat this Buckeye team. So it's going to be interesting to see. But right now, Michigan seems to be broken. Offensively, if it's not for the big plays, they don't really seem to be moving the ball. 5 turnovers, 2 interceptions, 3 fumbles. They still found a way they stole a victory. I'm going to say that because whenever you turn the ball over 5 times, there's no way you should win a game. They stole a victory over Northwestern. If you're a Michigan fan, you got to say, thank God it was Northwestern. It wasn't a top 10, top 20 team because I don't think you survived that game. It's like you saw what happened when they turned the ball over and didn't play great against Oklahoma early in the year. They didn't win. You saw what happened when they played USC. Didn't get it done. Speaking of USC is the other team that has a shot at becoming that 4th team, and they're still holding pace. They had a comeback victory. And who says it never rains in Southern California? It rained. It rained all day long. It had been raining for 24 hours before the game. It rained throughout the game. Iowa came to USC, to the Coliseum, and they brought Iowa-like weather there. Did everything they could to neutralize and slow the game down. Iowa jumps out to a lead, but USC found a way to come back. It was Brian Jackson with 2nd touchdown of the game. He runs the ball in. USC went, and then there was a key defensive stop at the end of the game with about 2 minutes to go against Iowa. Iowa plays great defense. USC had their hands full, but USC walked away with a 26-21 victory, setting themselves up for almost a quarterfinal game, a play-in type game, traveling to Oregon. This is it. If USC can beat Oregon, I think that you're now looking at a USC team that can feel pretty good about themselves because they finished the year off with UCLA, a game that I think that they can win out in California. If USC finds a way to beat Oregon, they would be the fourth team to get in. Of the two teams between Michigan and USC, I think USC has the better chance because Oregon not playing great lights-out football. And I think the thing about Oregon is when you're a great team, you get compared against your previous teams, meaning you compare this year's team to past and previous Oregon teams. Same way I do with when you look at Georgia. Georgia doesn't look like they're the same team because you're looking at all the Georgia players who are now playing for the Philadelphia Eagles, and you're like, wow, I remember when Georgia used to be really good. Like I said, I remember when Oregon used to be really good. Now they're good, but they're beatable. They're not dominant. Dante Moore, and that team has had some comeback games, and they're not that juggernaut that Oregon and Dan Lanning seem to be. This is going to be probably for me the game of the week is USC traveling out to Oregon to see what happens there. But I could easily see that fourth team making it in. And here's the other reason why. I found out something over the weekend. Guys, here's the deal. How can I put this politely? The ACC stinks. The ACC, it's possible that the ACC may not have any team in the college football playoff. What do you mean, Rico? I thought they had an automatic bid. They don't. They didn't negotiate an automatic bid in the contract. You just assume that Clemson would win it or, some top team would win it, and they would always have enough wins with like 1-2 losses or maybe no losses. But it's possible. When you're looking at the ACC, all hopes really are boiled down to Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech has to play Georgia in the game. Georgia Tech is maybe their only hope at getting a team in the college football playoffs because if somebody else wins this and they win it and wins out, like Pitt already has 3 losses. Virginia has 2 losses already. SMU has 3 losses already. Miami has 2 losses already. There's no guarantee and it's chaos every week when it comes to it's just chaos every week when it comes to what happens in hold on, let me find the schedule. When it comes to the ACC. So for the ACC, let me see, next week you're looking at Miami's playing Virginia Tech. That's going to kind of be, Miami, they're 17.5-point favorite. They should win that game. SMU and Louisville. Louisville's 3.5-point underdog on the road. You're also looking at Pitt playing Clemson. If Pitt somehow not Pitt playing Georgia Tech. If Pitt beats Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech's only a 2.5-point favorite at home. Now you're looking at the chaos and the carnage that the ACC is bringing. You could end up with no ACC teams. And the reason why I say that, the SEC and the Big Ten could cannibalize that spot and try to get an extra team in there. That's why if you're USC, this game with Oregon is so monumental that you need to go out there and you need to get that victory because that could be that 4th spot. Be good financially for the Big Ten if you could also get that 4th team in there. So for Michigan, you got Ohio State at home, but I think USC right now may pose the biggest threat in crashing the party going up against a beatable Oregon team. Now, it is on the road, but I do think that they are beatable. But yeah, ACC is just a bad conference right now. If anything, they'll get one team, but it's not a guarantee they'll get any teams in this thing because, as I stated, they could end up cannibalizing themselves by the end of the year. It's just not going to be a good look at and then finally final week is Miami playing Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh don't think they're going to be good enough to make it, but Pittsburgh could influence if the ACC would get a win. If Pittsburgh runs the table, they still wouldn't get in, but you're probably not looking at any ACC team in there as well. All right. Some other news that happened over the weekend. We talked about Luke Fickell. Luke Fickell got the pat on the back. Luke Fickell will be back next year for Wisconsin. And it looks like Wisconsin is going to try to help him out financially. Another team follows suit. That was Maryland. Maryland gets they give the approval to Mike Locksley. He'll be back next year with a promise of, we're going to really try to kick in some NIL money to try to get Maryland to be competitive. So Mike Locksley, not really great record in the Big Ten, but he has been retained for yet another year. And I know some Maryland fans may be upset with that, but I do look at the fact that you got to look at how many coaching jobs are available right now. Plus, do teams really want to pay the buyouts? Because it's the catch-22. If you pay the buyouts, well, that's less money you can spend on your team. Or you could cross your fingers, hope to God this coach figures things out, and use the money you would use and just pay him his contract and then take the extra money and try to get some better players in there. Wisconsin and Maryland have done that. I'm kind of getting a feeling that Michigan State may do the same thing. Interesting conversations over the weekend with some MSU higher ups that, look, when it came to the penalties that I did talk about already, it looked as if it was two types of penalties that happened. It was the $10,000 penalties. Those were for players and recruits that did not end up going to Michigan State. And ironically enough, that's not where they got the vacated games from. It wasn't for the 10 grand. It was for the $3,000 for ineligible players, for it sounds like improper flight benefits. And it's an antiquated rule in the NCAA, but it's a hard and fast rule. It's like, if you do this, then this happens. So I don't think that MSU knew what had happened. Kind of feels like that maybe a former staffer kept receipts and said, okay, I'm going to burn the house down. By the way, these were level 3 punishments, but sounds like former staffer may have just kind of said, no, here's what's really happening. And this is how MSU ended up vacating wins. It also sounds as if, look, and talking with Jonathan Smith after the end of the game, and look, he didn't help his cause losing to Penn State. It looked like for a second Michigan State was going to actually do something in that game. First play of the game, Tolliver takes it 75 yards. They're up 7-0. You're like, oh, okay. If you're a State fan, you could have went home after that and you'd have felt good, because Penn State ends up winning the game 28-10. After the end of the game, we asked Coach Smith what happened and how did you end up playing an ineligible player last year. And it was probably the first time he showed some emotion and a little bit of sense of humor and some anger all at the same time. He just looked at the reporter and was like, yeah. Meaning, I would love to tell you what happened, but I really don't know what happened. Feels like the compliance department didn't tell him, but I don't think that the compliance department knew anything as well. And by the time they figured it out, it was too late. They also have some recruiting limitations, but they were proactive and they've already eliminated 2 recruiting visits that they were not. They eliminated 2 recruiting visits this year already for the opening week and for the Michigan week. So, yeah, it's kind of weird. It's kind of convoluted situation going on in East Lansing. I do wonder if the situation going on under the 3-year of probation now and the minor recruiting violations and things that are happening, is that going to be enough? And look, I do believe from what I've heard from plenty of people that Jonathan Smith was promised some things that he didn't really get financially when it came to going after players. I wonder now with the new athletic director, is it almost like we kind of screwed you over? I wasn't here to screw you over, but sounds like the school screwed you over. They may give him another year, and I know Spartan fans are probably getting angry listening to me saying this, but guys, I don't feel as confident as I did a few weeks ago that he's going to be gone at the end of the year. I thought maybe this is a thing you save yourself a couple $1 million so you fire him at December 1st. But if they go out and you know they got Iowa and then they finish at home in their pseudo bowl game that they've created at Ford Field against Maryland, unless they lose like 100-0, I got a feeling similar to Luke Fickell, similar to Mike Locksley, Jay Batt's going to issue that statement that's going to boil the blood of a lot of Spartan fans and say that they're going to give Jonathan Smith another year. Now, when it comes to season ticket holders, I think you're probably going to lose about 30% of your season ticket holders who will say, I'm not paying money to watch this garbage next year. It kind of makes me think that those three coaches, if that were to happen, will kind of be lame duck coaches, and I expect them all to end up getting fired in the middle of next year, which is kind of a waste of a year. If you're going to fire somebody, you just fire somebody, and instead of crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. But that's something to watch out for. Now, as far as Jonathan Smith goes, I think the biggest thing is going to be what the big-time donors and boosters, not your season ticket. Trust me, your season tickets don't mean that much to Michigan State. It's what the big-time donors and boosters want to do. If they're okay with him one more year, he'll be back. If they don't want him for one more year, he'll be gone. I do believe it really may be that simple. I do expect Michigan State to get hit with Michigan State athletics, especially football, to hit with a big gift of donation. It's in the works. I think that the I's are being dotted and the T's are being crossed, but I do expect some news to come out. I don't think it'll be anytime soon. It may end up being sometime in the spring that the official word gets out, but there's a lot of smoke and a lot of people are saying, yeah, this thing is going to happen. If big-time donors who are going to be donating as much money as I've heard, and I've heard a lot of money, like this is like program rebuilding, restructuring, let's renovate the stadium type of millions of dollars, not even tens of millions, but hundreds of millions of dollars. If that's the case, then those boosters will really they'll be the judge, jury, and executioner of what's going to happen with Jonathan Smith. So if you're a Spartan fan, I can't sit here and tell you that he's going to be gone. Had a long talk and with some people, multiple people at Michigan State, and it led me to believe, filling in the gaps and the things that they could tell me, the things that they could not tell me. If I had to lay odds right here, right now, in taping this pod, I would say the odds are I would put money on Jonathan Smith being the Michigan State head coach next year. Don't throw things at me. Don't do it. Don't shoot the messenger. I don't think he's gone. I think he's going to be back. It could be the fact of, look, I think they're going to save money when it comes to the Mel Tucker lawsuit. I don't think that Mel Tucker has a case, but it could be just the fact of, look, you're in a situation now where your team's in a little bit of trouble. How appealing is that job to another team in a year where there's a ton of jobs out there and available? Will you have to pay extra to get a coach to kind of inherit your mess that was created? Or do you give him one more year? Look, watching that game, Jonathan Smith works at Michigan State if he does a couple of things. One is, you probably got to fire your OC. You got to come up with a better offensive scheme. Two, you got to go out and NIL and you got to buy 8 players. And you got to buy 8 top players because recruits are fine. But you're going to need 4 offensive linemen. You're going to need 4 defensive linemen. You're going to have to bring them in a la Texas Tech. And you may end up spending close to $10, $12 million on those 8 players. But you better do something because your offensive line is looking at Alessio, he got killed. Aiden Childs missed the game, and Aiden Childs is probably happy he missed the game because Alessio took a beating out there. Your offensive line is garbage right now. Now, look, I know it takes offensive linemen years to get ready, but you can't keep sticking a quarterback back there to take a beating like that unless you have about 3 or 4 quarterbacks ready because you're going to lose guys throughout the year. We all saw Aiden Childs take a couple of hits, and I do think he was concussed in a couple of games from the beating that he took. Alessio took a beating as well against Penn State. With just, I mean, they were all over him. That offensive line, I don't know if you need to get a new offensive line coach, but I just say you got to invest in talent. You're going to have to overpay to get some talent here. I don't know if you go group of 5, you go transfers from other Power 5 schools, but you got to do something. And your defensive line, you got to be able to get some pressure on the quarterback with your front 4. Like I said, Texas Tech invested the money. They used that oil landman type money. They got better. If you're Michigan State, you have to get better. You have to do the same thing. So if you bring back Jonathan Smith, hopefully that's what you'll end up doing. Improve your offensive line, improve your defensive line, and maybe you give yourself a chance. We'll see what happens. But anyway, that's this weekend's wrap up of the 5-Star Zone. Keep liking, subscribing, and telling your friends. I'm your host, Rico Beard. I'll be back later on in the week, talk a little hoops, and we'll also talk a little more football. Until then, I'll see you later.